Hi everyone, let's look at a second way of attacking the monster from before. Actually, this here is a cleaned up version of the monster. We have the -4/3 over here, remember? And then we can apply the substitution, u equals 4x plus 7, so then we get up to here. All right. Now, in this expression, in method 1, we factored the top. We factored the numerator. Now we're going to try a different method. We're going to rewrite this expression as a compound fraction first. All right. Looky here. We have the -2/3 as an exponent on u, which suggests that we can rewrite the second term up here as a fraction. So let's focus on the second term up on top. We get -1, or the opposite of the following fraction. We have a fraction here. Now, what are factors on the top and what are factors on the bottom? The 4 up here, I'll put this in green. The 4 up here is a factor on the top, stays on top. The x squared over here, you can think of that as x squared over 1, if that helps. You can think of this as x squared over 1, if that helps. The x squared basically can hop into the numerator. So if you have a factor out here, it can hop into the numerator. Typically not the denominator, though. So the x squared can hop into the numerator. Now, u to the -2/3, what is u to the -2/3? U to the -2/3 can be thought of as what? How can you rewrite that? As 1 over u to the +2/3. Which means if you multiply by this, u to the -2/3, you're multiplying by the fraction 1 over u to the 2/3. So the end result is that this can roll down into the bottom as u to the +2/3. By the way, the 3 down here, the denominator here, is also a factor of the bottom. Now be very careful. These guys in the bottom here, they do not roll all the way down to the bottom here. Do not do that. Do not do that. So the u to the 2/3 here, it goes snugly in here. Do not put it as a twin down below. That would be wrong. That would be wrong. Because then, if you put the u to the 2/3 down here, then it's going to have an impact on this guy over here. You don't want that. All right. So we have a small fraction inside a bigger fraction. All right. But again, don't be overly ambitious. What I have in red here is in red here. Do not put the little denominator in as part of the big denominator, the denominator of the big fraction down here. Okay. So now we have a compound or complex fraction. How do we avoid having this in the final answer? Well, I'll put brackets here for emphasis. The fraction bar automatically groups the top together, but I'll put the brackets here up for emphasis. What can we multiply the top and the bottom by so that eventually we can kill that bottom denominator, make it a 1? Well, how about this denominator? It's the overall LCD, the least common denominator, 3u to the 2/3. We multiply by that over itself. By the way, we're not worried about domain issues right now. It turned out that -7/4 is the only restriction from the domain, and that was true throughout. There were no hidden restrictions, but don't worry about domain right now. We're having a hard enough time with this stuff. All right. So anyway, we're multiplying by 3u to the 2/3 over 3u to the 2/3. Okay, we're multiplying by 1. Again, don't worry about domain right now. And then we use what D word? We can distribute. All right. Now, in this version here, I substitute. In this version, I don't. So let's ignore that part. Let's ignore that part. Okay, we definitely want to look at the substitution version over here. All right. So what I did was I took that fraction I just showed you, okay, this over here, and I'm putting the 3u to the 2/3 factors over to the left. Okay, that might make things easier. All right. So now, okay, let's go ahead and distribute in the top. Do not just go boom, oh, whoops. Don't just go boom, boom, and I get ones. Don't just do that, because then you're going to forget that the 3u to the 2/3 here affects this as well, the left term inside the brackets. All right, so 3u to the 2/3 times 2xu to the 1/3, we get, all right, 3 times 2 is 6. Then we have the x, u to the 2/3 times u to the 1/3. When you multiply powers of u, what do you do to the exponents? You add them. You get 2/3 plus 1/3. What is 2/3 plus 1/3? It's 3/3 or 1, which disappears, right? I mean, u to the first, you don't need the 1. So all this ends up disappearing because it's a 1 in the end. 2xu, right? Minus, now, when you attack this fraction with the 3u to the 2/3, then that's when you knock this denominator out. Okay, let's actually see it. In fact, I'll do this. I'll bring this copy up. Let's actually see it happen. All right. So here I indicate the multiplying, 3u to the 2/3 times 2xu to the 1/3. I just said that you end up with 6xu over here in the upper left, minus 3u to the 2/3 times the fraction. Now, after you've distributed, now you can go strike, strike. And I should put little ones here. But remember, don't do your striking until after you distribute. I better write that out in red. Don't strike or cancel until you distribute first. All right? You have to distribute first. Otherwise, you're in danger of forgetting about the fact that the 2xu to the 1/3 also must be multiplied by this. All right, all over, and then the product down there. So now, working on this copy here, as I just said, 3u to the 2/3 times 2xu to the 1/3, that's 6xu. Minus this fraction times its own denominator. Hey, what's 4/7 times 7, or 7 over 1? You get 4. What's 5/8 times 8? You get 5. What's this fraction times its own bottom? You get the top, 4x squared, just like over here. You get the tops. Minus 4x squared over 3 times what? When you multiply powers of u, what do you do to the exponents? You add them. 2/3 plus 2/3 is 4/3 over here. Substitute back. U was, remember, U was the quantity 4x plus 7. Sub back. Distribute. 6x times 4x is 24x squared. 6x times 7 is 42x. Minus the 4x squared over that ugly denominator there. Again, do not distribute the 3 here. That is wrong. Do not. A lot of students want to distribute, and that would be dead wrong. Don't do that. Do not do that. Sad face. Don't do that. Do not distribute because of the 4/3 here. That 4/3 exponent forbids you from distributing that 3 readily. In order for that to work, you have to have a 1 exponent where it disappears. All right, anyway, combining like terms on top, that's okay. 24x squared minus 4x squared is 20x squared. All right, and then you have plus the 42x. We aren't done, as it turns out, although in order to be sure that this is simplified, it helps to factor the top. 2x is the GCF on top, and this should look familiar. This is what we got before. Up here in method 1, it's the same thing as what we got before. 2x times the quantity 10x plus 21 all over 3 times the 4/3 power of 4x plus 7. There comes a point where the two methods connect. All right, so once again, what did we do? after we cleaned up and substituted. All right, we rewrote this as a fraction within a fraction because of that negative exponent, but know what's on top, know what's on bottom, and don't roll this little denominator into the denominator of the big fraction. All right, don't do that. That's a common error. Okay, multiply by 1. We multiply by that denominator over itself, but don't strike just yet. You have to do what first? You have to distribute first. That D word, you have to distribute first. You end up with this. Sub back, distribute. That's okay, that's a 1 exponent. Combine like terms, make sure it's simplified, and you're done once again. Monsters. Slay those monsters, and they'll no longer be monstrous.